duplicating your troops and enemies to win fights, pushing back the gloom, or embracing it to make the most defensible territory possible. If any of that interests you, stick around. Greetings, I'm Sophis. This time around we're covering two builds that are more like two sides of the same coin. Both are good in defending territory and terraforming. However, one is about embracing the gloom, whilst the other is all about pushing it back. They are similar in tome composition, but vary in playstyle. First up, we have the Highborn Liberators, taking advantage of the new Cleansing Flames tome and mixing it up mainly with the Order and Nature tomes to make the land safe and vibrant. Their gimmick is having a variety of support options for your armies. They also have two units that are able to control the enemy and turn them against your other foes, so you are effectively turning the gloom against itself. They also have plenty of healing options to try and mitigate the damages of the Umbral Abyss without falling to corruption. Next, we have the Fallen Wardens, embracing the powers of the Eldritch Realms in favor of having extremely defensible territory with a combination of certain tome boons. They also rely on easily summonable reinforcements and use spells to control the battlefield. At full swing, their territory is rather annoying to take, and they fight quite well within it. So let's get started with the Highborn Liberators. Form traits this time around are Keen-Sighted, Arcane Focus, and Cold-Blooded, to boost support units whilst making the overall army more steadfast. Culture is high for their solid roster, and thematically they seem like the righteous sorts. Society traits are Druidic Terraformers and Fabled Hunters. We'll be terraforming away corruption, so the cost reduction is nice. The terrain bonuses are just an extra benefit. Fabled Hunters reward you for clearing infestations, which the nests in the Umbral Abyss count as. Besides, you need the dual nature affinity in here. The first tome is Cryomancy. Far as the leader, you can go with any leader type, but thematically I prefer the champion. Now, this is the tome setup. We start with Cryomancy for its elemental buffs that will support our varied troop roster, but mainly for Blizzard, as this enemy army targeting spell reduces their status resistance by a significant margin. Also, the ability to freeze through Ice Coffin or the White Witch is quite good, but we mostly want this tome just so we can make controlling our enemies on the battlefield a little more successful. Up next is the Tome of Faith. Army Heal will help in reducing gloom attrition within the Umbral Abyss. Staves of Mending is our first boost to our support units, and the Chaplain is one of the 3 viable support options for your army composition. Then we pick the Tome of the Beacon for the sake of the Lightbringer, our first unit capable of converting enemy units permanently to our side. And Mighty Meek will give our Tier 1 units a small edge. Another benefit of this tome is Divine Beacon, which is a very useful combat summon. Just be mindful that auto battle more often than not has the Lightbringer dying, so try to manual combat the fights with armies that have them in their composition if you want to snatch enemy units. Otherwise have them follow your army on the back line, just to protect them. Our next tome is Fertility, giving us Restore the Land first and foremost. On the world map, this clears the gloom off of tiles, even the ones with gateways to the Abyss in them. It won't work within the Umbral Abyss itself, but it's your main tool to fight against its influence spreading outside. The other thing within this tome relevant to the build is the Nymph. Like the Lightbringer, it can convert enemy units to your side, and it has the benefit of being a support unit like the Chaplain and the Sun Priest. At the next tier, we go for Sanctuary, giving us Sanctuary. It's a good province improvement that was really strong on launch, but now it's still pretty good. 4 turns to pillage any province in your city gives you plenty of time to respond. Also, Anointed People and Keeper's Mark are good buffs to have. We then get to one of the new tomes, Cleansing Flame. Pure Flame staves will boost your support units further, and Temple of the Pyre alongside Sanctuary gives your territory the ease of defense you need to be less concerned of infestations and invasions. Flame Blast Champions is also a great buff for the front line, and the tome gives us a solid tier 4 unit for when you need to bring in the big guns with the Flame Templar. In the next tier, you need to be mindful of how you level your faction leader. To get to the Tome of Paradise, we need 6 nature affinity, which means 2 of your signature skills need to be nature at this point. The payoff for this is the tome giving you Enchanted Bloom, your cast and forget enchantment to spread grasslands throughout your domain. You could also grab Fortress of Vines to further bump up your city fortification health, and your next consideration would be whether to pick Gaia's Chosen or not. This is due to it being a major transformation, and as it happens, our next tome, the Tome of Exaltation, also has a major transformation within it with Angelic. As it states, you can only have one major transformation, so pick whichever one you prefer. In Exaltation, you have a lot of useful buffs and spells, another tier 4 unit in case you want it, and although Ascended Warriors got nerfed by increasing its casting cost, it is still a great way to rank up your troops. Then we wrap with the Tome of the God Emperor. Divine Protection will give your whole army resurgence, and Mass Revive will let you bring back your troops when things get dire. Given the dangers of the Umbral Abyss, both very worthwhile tools to have. Campaign-wise, there's nothing too specific. You should find success with any combination of the units this build gives you. Faithful as well as Mighty Meek make fielding low-tier armies very viable. There's more nuance when it comes to support units, however. The Nymph is good to keep around for healing and letting you seduce enemy units, but the downside is the casting cost of summoning one. Sun Priests are better for purely ratio unit comps due to its Awakening skill, but you can also make them work for anything you field if you cast Dormant Enchantment. If you don't want the mana upkeep, the Chaplain is an alternative for non-racial unit army compositions, such as the mixed bags that you get from Rally of the Lieges. And there's not much else to say in this regard. Unlike some of my prior builds, this doesn't heavily favor a specific composition or unit. Play with what feels right to your tactical situation, because I find the roster of this build very well rounded in that regard. Now for the Fallen Wardens. Form traits could be whatever you want, but as this build will mostly have racial troops acting as meat shields, Tenacious, Hardy, and Tough get the job done. Culture is industrial for the sake of defense and production, and thematically there's something fun about them of all cultures falling to corruption. Society traits are perfectionist artisans for a strong economy and umbral disciples for a gloom affinity. First tome is rock, and we're going with the Eldritch Sovereign for this one, but the dragon could also do the trick. This is the Tome Setup. Rock at the start is an early boost to our production, as well as having a minor transformation to improve our defenses, as well as obsidian weapons to boost our damage. There isn't much else to say about this pick other than this being a very solid start. Then we get its opposite with the Tome of Warding. The Phantasm Warrior is the cornerstone of our army with this faction, filling any gaps and being quickly deployable. Its status as a racial unit gives it all the benefits of the transformations we'll accumulate, another of which we do get in this tome with magical wards. At tier 2 we get the first province improvement that will help with defending our domain. We go for the Tome of the Fey Mists. The Feywater Pond turns the home advantage heavily in your favor, and of course everything else in this tome works off of that buff. By this point you will also likely have some gloom going on in your terrain. Next is the Tome of the Inquisition, which, quite frankly, is here mostly to help us get the Order affinity for what comes next. The enchantment here does not benefit our Phantasm Warriors, but you could invest in fielding some Inquisitors if you wanted. None of the other Order tomes at this stage give a benefit that I would call significant, but you do need those affinity points. Unless you're really farming for experience, it is unlikely that your leader will have the signature skills needed for you to have 4 Order affinity when you need to get to the next tomes. Which brings us to Sanctuary. Much like the other build in this video, the benefit here is greater due to how in this faction territory defense is absolute. So having healing spires and sanctuary goes a long way to making your provinces safe. Up next, the Tome of Corruption gives us some goodies. Treacherous Reflection lets us copy enemy units to disrupt the battlefield, and Gloom Strider is a good transformation to go a step beyond Umbral Disciples. The summon here isn't half bad either. Rather than go into tier 4, we'll stay at 3 and grab Cleansing Flame. The reason is the Temple of the Pyre. Its ability to ignore the penalties of sieges is one of the final pieces in making our territory really difficult for enemies to deal with. You may grab the other parts of this tome as much as you find fitting for a formerly good faction that fell to the Abyssal Corruption. Then we get to the Tome of the Astral Mirror. Here we get Throne of Mirrors, giving your besieged city a copy of your ruler. This is why we picked an Eldritch Sovereign or a dragon as our leader, to give a strong combat advantage when the enemy catches you in a bad moment. The spell Summon Astral Reflection then gives you an opposite alternative to what Tome of Corruption gave you, letting you copy your own units. One thing to be mindful of is that to get this as an option, your leader needs to offer you 2 Astral Affinity. I picked the signature skills that granted them with my leader, and it is far more feasible to have hit level 8 by this stage of the game. If you dislike those skills, you can always change them back after picking up the tome, as the first reset costs you no Imperium. We then finish the tomes with Tome of the Archmage. The reason for it is the hero skill that will further boost your leader, since we are getting more copies of them through the Throne of Mirrors. Also, the tome has Time Stop, one of the strongest battlefield spells. Campaign-wise, as soon as you can, you'll want to set up the Altar of Marching Gloom. Marauders aside, any foreign unit wandering into your territory will get attrition damage. Combined with how quickly you get mists, rival leaders and hostile free cities will have a clear disadvantage fighting here. One thing I do want to note is that the spread of gloom seems a little bugged at the moment. This is the same territory much later in the game. Gloom has spread quite far beyond the borders, but some provinces remain uncorrupted, as you can see. Assuming this is unintended behavior, I still recommend building the structure and expecting a fix at some point in the future. Now, in military matters, your bread and butter will be the Phantasm Warriors, once you unlock them. Use your heroes and leader to focus down the more problematic enemies. The warriors are here mostly to be your tar pit and meat shields, letting spells and skills win the battle. Since we've gone industrial, any benefit that the phantasms get, the bastions have as well, becoming your heavy-duty shield option, which only gets better once you unlock the power to duplicate them in battle. The playstyle is quite simple and fun. Delay and disrupt the foe both in your home territory and on the battlefield. And that's what I have for you today. I've been busy with other matters beyond the channel, but expect a continuation of my RimWorld playthrough soon, and I am looking into more possible builds with this update. Until next time, and have a good day.